first virtual public charrette for Envision 2030. As I stated to some as we got on, this is a small group tonight who RSVP'd. So what I'd like to do is start with introductions and then engage in a relatively informal discussion about any feedback, comments, questions, concerns that you might have on the Envision 2030 vision statement, goals, and objectives. I do have it open so we can scroll through and make notes as we move through it. I was not planning to show the YouTube video. It's about 30 minutes long, but I'm happy to, if there are members of the public who haven't had a chance to see it and would like to stay on and review that. So I'll go ahead and get us started. My name is Miranda Fisher. I'm the Deputy Town Administrator, Town Clerk for Nederland, and I've really helped to serve as administrative support to the Envision 2030 Advisory Committee. So I'm just going to work my way down the list. Ari, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ari Goodman. I am the Independent Rural Living Advisor for the Center for People with Disabilities up here in the Peak to Peak region, and the chair for the Human Health and Human Services Subcommittee for this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari. Dawn, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute there if you're there, Dawn.
Yeah, it helps to unmute. Dawn Baumhofer, Community Center Manager, and for Town of Nederland, and on the Arts, Culture, and Education Committee for Envision 2030.
Thanks, Dawn. And then I see we have Jasmine and Miley here, members of the community, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello. My name's Jasmine, and this is Miley. I don't know if you can see we're driving back to Ned right now. And we just moved to town in December. We live above the Black Forest restaurant, and we're hoping to contribute in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. We're glad to have you. Thank you. So my list says Julian, and I can't see pictures while sharing my screen, but I'm assuming it's Jeanette there.
Yeah, that's me.
All right. You want to introduce
Sorry.
yourself?
That's because I'm using his WebEx and his computer. So
I figured.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it says Julian S. Taylor, me. Yeah, I'm Jeanette Taylor. I'm a member of the public. And I just wanted to say, yeah, let's not watch the video because it's just the PowerPoint, or it's just the document read out loud, right? That's all it is.
Correct. We wanted to give people an auditory version of this same document for whatever their learning style is.
After I got about half the way through it, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
You are, that is true. Karen Blakemore.
Hi, I'm Karen Blakemore. I'm a planning commissioner for the town of Nederland. I'm also on the Forsyth 2 multi-party monitoring group and the Nederland EcoPass Advisory Board. I'm chairing the Environmental Sustainability Subcommittee, and I'm a member of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space.
Perfect. Thanks, Karen. Karen Garrity. You're muted if you're there, Karen.
I'm sorry. You'd think after over a year now we'd have this down. But I'm Karen Garrity. I am the town administrator, and like Miranda, I have been providing administrative support to all of the committees working on the Envision 2030. So thank you everyone for coming. We really want to hear from folks.
Yes, definitely. Lee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Dell, longtime Nederland resident. Been working in town since '82. Live here. I'm also the elected Boulder County surveyor. Also, Miranda, Tom doesn't have a link to get into the meeting. So if somebody could send that to him, that would help.
Yep, I'll do that right now.
My goal in this is to get people, my goal in being blunt in our goals was to try to get people talking about issues that the town's going to face. I think, in my mind, we're going to face these issues quicker than we think, and we have to be ready. The example I use is the Mud Lake purchase that we did back in 1999, 2000. If the town and the county hadn't come together quickly to save Mud Lake, there would be 7 houses around Mud Lake, and it would all be private property. So we need to put ourselves in a position where the citizens of Nederland and the town of Nederland figures out what's really wanted in how this area is going to be redeveloped, especially the downtown area right now, which seems to be the area that's most at risk for redevelopment. I don't mean that in a bad way, but there's 2 main.
Lee, I think we lost you, but I wanted to just let people finish their introductions really quick, if that's okay. But I think we lost you. Mary May, do you want to go next?
Okay, I'm Mary Gerald, and I'm a longtime Nederland resident and Boulder County resident. I'm on 4 different committees, and I'm chair of 2, so that would be Arts, Education, and Culture, and the Housing Committee, which obviously is going to have some common goals with some of the other committees. Both of them do. We focused a little bit on culture in the one committee, and also parks and public engagement, which really, to me, after watching the town, I was on the comp plan 1994. So the public engagement process is something that we really want to try to develop. So if anyone who's listening has some great ideas or has written some software for that new webpage, want to hear from you. So that's it.
Thanks, Mary. Peter.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry, I'm sitting right next to Ari and getting some feedback on that end. My name is Peter. I am the administrative assistant at Town Hall, and I've been doing a lot of kind of the back end nuts and bolts for like the website and PowerPoint presentation parts of Envision. So I'm here to kind of just take notes, make sure I understand everyone's feedback, because it'll help make my job easier in the future, which will hopefully make Envision easier in the future.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Peter, for everything you have done thus far and will do in the future. Tom and Jill, we're just running through quick introductions before we dive into feedback. So Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I wanted Tom Hold over near the fire station. Just wanted to say thanks to Peter for making it really smooth. I budgeted an hour and we had it done in 15.
He is fast and efficient. It's great. Jill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jill, Executive Director at Wild Bear Nature Center, and I've been in Nederland for 25 years. And I am the chair of the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Advisory, Trails, Envision 2030 Committee. And I'm on the Envision 2030 Environmental Sustainability Committee. And it's been an honor to be on here. So thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And last, we have a call-in user. Is that potentially Kayla? Or who's called in?
Maybe it's a double.
Okay. Well, we have a call-in user as well. So welcome, everyone. So again, like I said, we'd like to take a relatively informal approach to this because really Jasmine, Miley, and Jeanette, we're all here for you. As you see, you have members from all the different subcommittees. And so what we'd like to do is have each of you launch into your questions or your feedbacks and comments, and we will respond if and when appropriate. So Jeanette, can I maybe kick it to you to start us?
Sure. So I went through the document and I yellowed in everything I found that problematic. So I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me to go through all these yellow comments and say, this is what I'm concerned about?
Yeah, that would be great. And we can I'll move through the screen as well.
Okay. Well, I'm starting in arts, culture, and education. I appreciate all the arts and culture stuff. I think it's great, and I'm in fact 95% of this document I think is fabulous, and I think you all have done a great job. And I just I want to say I really wholeheartedly support most of it. There's a couple of little tweaks, mostly I have, although I've some that are a little more tweakier than others. The first one is under culture, the statement, continue the use of alternatives to flashlights, stoplights, and traffic control that tarnishes the surrounding beauty. And, nobody wants massive stoplights. Nobody wants flashing lights through Nederland. I get that. But until somebody comes up with a really safe alternative, we don't even have crosswalks in our town right now. I mean, we do not have crosswalks. If you just drive along and look, you'll see there's no painted crosswalk at all through town. So we need signs. We need some kind of indicator that people are crossing. And if we say from the beginning, we're never going to use lights, we may kill people. So I would really like to change that if possible. I would suggest it change to continue to seek alternatives rather than continue the use of alternatives, because we aren't using them, except for roundabouts, with their roundabouts nice, but that's really the only safe intersection we've got in all of Netherlands. So I'm kind of you've probably seen me on Facebook be a crosswalk mean person. I'm constantly yelling about our lack of crosswalks, constantly going to CDOT saying, where are our crosswalks? So anyway, that was one thing that concerned me. I just feel that seeking alternatives to flashing lights is fine, but until we invent them, somebody invents them, we don't have them. So that was one thing I was thinking about.
And Jeanette, while we have Miley and Jasmine here, I guess I would also like to invite them, if you two have any feedback about arts, culture, and education as well, while we're within the subcommittee, please shout out too, so we don't have to run through the whole document twice.
I think our feedback's going to be more limited. We didn't know what the homework was. This is our first meeting, so we're here learning.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'd love to at the end just get your email and I'll send you lots of documents and the ways that you can add feedback after we're done here.
Thank you.
All right, is it back on me?
Back to you.
All right, because you guys know that I've been here 23 years. I have a lot of opinions. And I'm going to state them. Unfortunately, the lighting in my husband's office is yellow. So where I yellowed in everything, it's turned white. So I can't really see anything. Okay. So my next concern, I mean, again, 100% support everything you're doing. I love the housing statements. I love the environmental sustainability. I saw Jill Dreves in there. I know she did a great job on that. I'm stepping up to municipal government. So I'm way ahead. Many of the statements here, I think, make a lot of sense. We desperately need to digitize our records so that our staff isn't overwhelmed with requests for things that haven't been digitized. I understand about partnering in redevelopment with landowners. That all is cool. I was horrified and embarrassed by this statement. Nederland will update and change zoning map to reflect reality. Now, I realize that's blunt, and I realize that was probably meant with tongue in cheek, but I don't believe it belongs in Envision 2030. I think it's a horrible thing to say about our town code. So I just had to throw that in. Anyone want to argue with me on that? Because I'll listen.
Well, I mean, you can not like that statement, but there's areas in Nederland where the zoning map just doesn't make any sense. And so
I understand that, Lee, and I agree with you.
We need to change that zoning map to make sense. And
I
don't know how to say it.
Okay, I think we just need to reword it so that it doesn't sound so baldly mean. because it really sounds mean.
Well, it's not intended. It's not
It's
intended
insulting,
meanly.
in my opinion. So I think I would be glad to help you reword that in a way that is less demeaning to our current situation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just it's
Feedback
harsh.
taken. Yeah.
Huh?
Feedback taken. We'll.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have some more to go through.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure certain. So
Yeah.
that was my WTF moment.
Mhm.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
Excuse me, Jeanette. Can
Yeah.
I ask a question about the zoning map?
Yeah, absolutely.
To Tom and Lee, can you explain what exactly is wrong with the current zoning map?
Well, I know of a couple of examples, and I'll spell them out. Okay, so right next to Emmerling Engineering, on the east side of Emmerling Engineering, on the north side of Colorado 119, between the town sign where it says Nederland welcomes you and the Emmerling Engineering site, that's zoned commercial. And it's on top of a big bluff. I mean, there's no way to get up there. So that, I think, is one section that, I mean, maybe there's a way to build a road up there and stick it on top of that cut. But that's one spot. The other spot I'm thinking is, and there's many spots, but the other spot that really is glaring to me is the old Historical Society property across from Schneider's Garage. You know, that's right downtown. And so currently it's zoned in a way that you can't park more than 19 cars there. I think that's what the limit is. And that just seems silly when there's a parking lot there. So I mean, those are two examples.
So I think, so I'm on the Planning Commission, and I think in order, what is the process to change the zoning map? I know we have a zoning variation.
Usually what happens normally is that when you update your comp plan, you also update your zoning map. Now that's how it normally happens as a course of action. You can, though, in between comp plan creations and updates, you can update it to make corrections. For instance, when our person who put the zoning map together last time previously made a mistake with the Historical Society property, it was color coded the wrong way in a map that was adopted, so we had to fix that. So in that case, even though it was in between the comp plan update, it needed to be done for the property owners. So, but normally that's when you do the zoning map. So when you do the comp plan update, the zoning map would be updated accordingly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I think what Lee is suggesting is that we change the zoning of the lot across from Snyder's Garage from commercial residential to commercial, and I think that's something we have to go through the proper procedures to do.
There actually is a procedure that the property owner could do. You can actually request it, which is what the Historical Society did, ask for the correction, but any property owner can actually apply for a rezone. Now there's certain rules around it and so on and so forth, but and there's of course a cost to have staff and the Planning Commission and legal and all the folks look at it and review it, but there is a process to go through.
So
go ahead, Karen.
It doesn't seem like that should be a goal to change it from residential commercial to commercial, because that is something that the property owner would initiate. So
Exactly.
So I don't think that bullet belongs in the
Well,
goals and objectives.
that's my argument. I'm sorry if I was a little abrupt about that. What I'm trying to say is that an Envision document has a specific philosophy, and this is a practical thing. This statement about the zoning problems is a practical problem that needs to be solved by the town and by the landowners. But it is not an overall philosophical statement. It is not, this is a long-term 10-year goal for this town. I understand that you're saying that there is a problem with the zoning, but it seems to me that is a nuts and bolts problem, not a vision.
And
that's what I'm concerned about.
And it may not be a problem, just a desire of the property owner. And the property owner has to go through the proper procedures in order to request a zoning change, which may be denied.
Most towns have those.
Yeah.
Would it fit into an action item, perhaps? I mean, it's just kind of, I think, a thing where a goal, an objective, and then there's action. So maybe an action could be evaluate the current zoning map and meet with landowners to determine most effective zoning changes.
Okay.
Well, and
but it's not an objective.
Joe, one suggestion I have is that, when the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees was talking about updating the comp plan, they decided that the first thing they wanted to have happen is Envision 2030. And then next in line will be the update to the comp plan. So, I mean, one thing we could think about doing is saying Netherlands will update its comprehensive plan and the zoning map, within a certain amount of time or whatever, because then you address both and you're doing it in a very cohesive process and letting the Envision 2030 inform you.
Absolutely. That seems to me an appropriate statement for an Envision document.
Thumbs up for me.
I'm fine with that.
Karen, looking ahead, okay, what's the next hurdle after Envision? When does that happen? Which quarter?
When does Envision get passed, approved?
No, after Envision, the next hurdle, it sounded like, was some sort of review of a comprehensive plan.
Well, then it would be, the conversation will be with the community and the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees is the update to the comprehensive plan. So what normally would happen then is there would be a conversation around, can we just do an update to the current plan? Like you would look at it and say, what have we met? Are these goals still relevant? Can we just update it? Or do we kind of need to start the whole process again? And then the conversation would be, do we do it internally or do we hire a third party? Staff would look for grant money, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, got it. So we're talking several years out, it sounds like.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think the hope, of course, COVID changed everything. We had hoped a Vision 2030 would have been done last year, and we could have potentially started on the update to the comp plan this year. We of course got slowed down. This is a very different kind of cumbersome process for Envision 2030, although I think it's very productive and very cool and innovative. What will things look like when we start updating the comp plan? Will we be meeting in person? How will we be doing that? So it's hard to say, but I would say it could start as early as the beginning of next year. I mean, that's plausible.
Our committee has taken up far too much time. Let's move along.
Okay.
Well, it's me who's talking a lot. So I will say I apologize for saying that it was insulting, but what I'm trying to say is that this document is about big vision. It's about nine-year vision. It's not about nuts and bolts. And so not only did that particular statement seem a nuts and bolts statement to me, but much of the Economic Development Committee's goals and objectives struck me as nuts and bolts as well. And I am very concerned that we take another good look at the goals and objectives, because establishing a 50-foot high building design requirement in our design allowance in Netherlands, is that a vision or is that something we actually need to talk about from the standpoint of our design standards. Repairing a specific building, examining parking and traffic is great, but it has to be a vision statement. We want to make it more welcoming for visitors. We want to make our town look more welcoming to visitors, or not, or we want to make it better for, easier for people with ADA needs to get around in town. Those are big vision statements. And so that was why the entirety of the economic development statement, well, 50% of it, struck me as being inappropriate to the concept of an Envision document. But really, other than that, I think the rest of the Envision document is fabulous. And so that was what I had to say.
I'd like to chime in on the definition of a goal and objective. It shouldn't be solutions. It should be the desired outcome, the problem that you're trying to solve. For example, with the 50-foot high buildings, are you trying to increase tax revenue? Are you trying to add employee housing? Are you trying to diversify economically? Are you trying to create a healthier economy? Those are goals and objectives. And then as an action or project or initiative for that goal would be potentially investigating ways to achieve that desired outcome. And one of those could be increased building height.
Right. I hear that. I think I'm trying. What I'm concerned about is that when we put nebulous things like we want to increase building height, well, then you get 15 different people that have 15 different ideas about how to do that.
I wouldn't say you increase building height. Why do you want to increase the building height?
Well, because right now what we've got is in that area. I think that block is the block that's going to change the most in the next 10 years.
Which block?
I think that block is going to be where the change comes.
Which block are you talking about?
The downtown block where the old grocery store is, the Mountain Burger, the Acoustic Coffee House, and where Ron Mitchell owns the entire block. That is the block that's going to change right now. Ron is 82 years old. That block is going to change hands. And if we don't have some sort of a vision, and if it's not specific, then what's going to end up happening is we're going to get stuff that's piecemeal and crappy. We're going to end up with
Hi, I just want to jump in. Just a little bit much. I think if I can just be a little bit of a delegate. I love hashing stuff out, but I would like, if it's okay, I understand completely what you're saying, because that block matters a lot. But if we could refrain from mentioning ages and that kind of discrimination based on what people might do in the near future for their health and safety, I would appreciate that, just to shift a little bit. I love the fact that you're saying the block is the most important. I think you're correct. And I loved your point at the last meeting where you mentioned, hey, listen, we really got to focus on centralizing this to keep the forest safe, that kind of development. Love that. That is incredibly relevant, especially with the fires having and the camping and the homeless situation. So on a note that I want to give credit where credit's due, I kind of understand where you're coming from with the height thing. If it's about the growth and being able to expand within that center of the town, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yes.
So I'm getting what everyone's reading, and I'm hearing that. I hope you can just see it from more of like a backseat approach of me listening. I want to keep the bit of sensitivity, but I love the realistic approach that you're giving me at the same time. Also, though, I do want to say, looking through the ceiling thing, I can see, I got to do it. I'm not seeing any thing specifically about Americans Disability Act, ADA approved, for anybody who might in town have a disability.
Good catch.
And I'm
Thank
thinking
you.
of these beautiful new buildings you're mentioning. I want to be in them, but also I want to know they're accessible to my consumers. So just knowing that they would have working elevators, maybe a lip over ramp, something removable, doesn't have to be like anything to destroy the integrity of the history of the town. Maybe just something in there about ADA approved to make it accessible to all. I would appreciate that more than anything. But I see where you're both coming from. So thank you for this conversation and hashing it out. I appreciate that.
I entirely agree, Ari, and I think that a vision is ADA accessibility throughout our town is a goal, is a part of the vision. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years that might make that easier. So if we say right now, we must have wheelchair ramps, when we don't know what kind of exciting things might be happening that might make things even more accessible. So a vision is there to say, this is our goal. And hopefully we will back engineer the goal as we move on. So that's all I'm saying.
This is Karen. That was to Karen Blakemore's point of what is a goal and objective is an overarching, but I also hear, Lee, your point of if we have this overarching goal, do we have specific things we can do, and will it just go willy-nilly? So to me, the objective could include, developing processes to, address the needs of the Nederland community in a way that's effective, planning around, specifically the downtown Nederland, but not so specific, because to Jeanette's point, things change and you don't know what will happen in 9 years. So I think that it will be an important thing to leave open, but then having those action ideas below your goals and objectives is very important to capture the thoughts of today as we move forward.
And don't you think height belongs in the comp plan anyway?
Well, this is Karen Garrity. The one thing I was going to suggest is that normally what you see in municipalities who are allowing for taller buildings beyond, let's say, the 35 feet, it's called a density bonus. And it's provided when developers are providing affordable housing or affordable commercial spaces. So my suggestion is you tweak that says something like Nederland code includes density bonuses for providing affordable housing and commercial spaces, or something like that, because that's, I think, because I sat in those meetings, and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the idea, was to provide more living units and affordable commercial spaces.
Yes, that's part of it. But I really struggle with nebulous statements that can be taken, 10 different ways, and then you get a bunch of lawyers involved, and then nothing gets done. I really struggle with that. And so
I can understand that, Lee.
If you have a clear statement that says we will allow a 50-foot buildings in this block, and the other thing I think that developers are going to do what they do to make money. That's what they do, and so what's happened in Boulder is that the developers, if you look at Boulder, it's an ugly city. It's ugly. And it's ugly because it's got flat roofs. Every single roof in Boulder is flat. It looks like a prison. And so I really want to get away from that. I want to try to encourage, I want Nederland to be cool, to not have just a bunch of flat roofs. I think we need to be specific.
Lee, I think the goal there would be to improve the aesthetics of the central commercial business district, and then a solution might be to increase the height. So what I'm having trouble with is the goals and objectives shouldn't be solutions. They should.
I want to think the increase the height comment is an opinion. I think that there are some opinions in here, and not everybody may share them. And when you look at Envision 2030, you can't put your opinions out there. I think it's got to be a way for people to discuss, make decisions, and cohesively plan for the future. So I think we
understand.
should avoid opinions. That's my point.
I
And
agree.
I also thought that we would include environmental sustainability in each one of our visions.
So I agree where Jill is saying that we shouldn't be putting our personal opinions, because we got to be bigger than that. We have to be more than that. We're it's a very utilitarian type of feel, right? That it's for the good of all, and it's for everybody. Everybody can have a piece of the vision as long as we share it, kind of thing. I do understand though, Lee, like, just so you don't feel like you're in this corner here, I'm seeing it, and I feel the same way working in nonprofit, where if you don't give these rigid lines, you're not going to get results, and it'll be 400 meetings when it could have been 3, right? Because nobody's getting to the point. So I kind of see what you're saying, but I also understand where, maybe we can find a loophole for that. Maybe there's this loophole where we can get way more in depth with specifically like mapping and whatnot and zoning to get to that point, to make that work and make this a reality. Like how Tom was saying, in how many years, what's the next step? How do you turn it into that reality? So I see that maybe it's not super fitting here, but that doesn't mean it's not relevant. Do you know what I'm saying?
Doesn't most of this belong in the Boulder in the Netherlands design code? I thought we had a design code.
Well, I'd like to jump in here. This is May Gerald. I actually totally agree with Lee from the perspective of arts, education, and culture. When I was reading through the 0.5% responses on the surveys, one thing that was really pretty consistent throughout was the desire for a decent downtown. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read those, but that was very consistent. There were also comments about the look of the town. And so, I mean, when I heard about a public charrette, I was envisioning something along the lines of how Ron has presented his project over and over again, so that I think many of us here in town have seen that presentation. But I would suggest that would be 3. I would hope that we could, as part of the public engagement committee, start to define what the questions are and where people stand. So to me, there are 3 alternative visions for that property, and they can all be represented in a graphic or in a little poster. And one would be a downtown that was, as big as Ron envisions it. One would be a Tebow design, and one would be Ron sits on it and his kids take over, and in the meantime, it's just going to stay the way it is. And if people had, click on the one you like. We don't have any way to tabulate the people's responses, and it does end up going round and round. So
Mary,
that
sounds like
asked at the beginning that the public engagement process is the most important part. We have to be able to offer them alternatives and have a way to tabulate meaningful results. And I think Lee and his committee, I congratulate them for putting in some stuff that may sound rude, because I think that really about 90% of what we really should be envisioning, the top of the hill view. What does it look like? And if you've gone to Ron's presentations, you know that it's not going to be any smaller than his when Tebow gets it. So I'm just saying.
But doesn't a 50-foot height allowance feed right into what Ron wants to do?
Yeah, but Tebow will get it later if you try to outlive Ron, which is really kind of rude.
Yeah, in our Envision document, we refer to the fact that downtown area is going to change hands soon, and
That shouldn't be in there.
I think that's inappropriate. I think that should be omitted.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
Unless you have a document.
What I'm trying to say there, and again, is that, look, it's reality. These are the two parcels that we really have to focus on. And if we don't focus on these parcels, if we just stick our head in the sand and say, oh, this isn't going to change, nothing's going to change there.
Okay,
Well, we're not
as a citizen, you're saying I'm sticking my head in the sand, Lee?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what I'm saying is that we, as a community, we need to discuss what we want in those areas, so that when those areas do change hands, because they are going to change hands at some point, and probably within the next 10 years, right? That we have an idea of what we want, what the citizens want. And so the only way to do that is to actually, now maybe it doesn't belong in here, right? We can take it out if you want to take it out, but we have to have the discussion in order to make thoughtful decisions about what we want the downtown to look like.
So I'm going to ask again, do we have a design standard that the downtown needs to meet?
Well, right now, the design standard.
There is a design standard.
The design standard, as I understand it right now, says that it has to look like everything else, which precludes, it makes it one-story buildings, basically.
Karen, is that the case?
Well, Lee, that's your interpretation of one of the lines of the entire design standard.
And this is the problem.
Design standard does say that the buildings have to kind of gel with the neighborhood that they're in, or that type of thing. But that's just one of the sentences in there. It's actually
I can see
that's
his
the problem. That's the
but I can see his
problem right
point.
there. That's
Well,
the
I think the
problem,
objective
Karen.
probably should say review the design standards to determine
Exactly.
the viability in
Right.
the town
That's
of Netherland.
fine.
That
That's
should be
fine.
the objective.
That's a vision.
Right.
That's a vision.
I'm
So all
fine
I'm
with that.
saying is there are ways that an envision statement is one thing, a design standard is another thing. And if what we're trying to do here is this is trying to impose design standards in a vision document. And I felt uncomfortable with that because so many things change over the next 9 years. Lee, I understand your concerns and I share them. Believe me, I really do. I'm very worried about what's going to happen to our downtown. I don't want to see it effed up. But I feel that the only way to seriously make sure that happens is to put some bars around overwhelming development through design standards, through the comp plan that say, this is how this must be done. This is about what the citizens want to see in the long run.
So the first one, Netherland will update and change town code that is ambiguous and outdated, could say evaluate and update town code to reflect
The will of the rest of the citizens.
current citizens' needs, or or current economic goals, or evaluate and update
cohesive
town
vision of
code.
Netherland. Yeah.
Instead of the ambiguous and outdated, it could just say to reflect, current economic goals.
I think what the citizens of the town want to see.
Yeah, or something like that.
Right. And I think Maya's got a really good point that it would be really nice if we could really understand what people want to see in their downtown, if we could quantify that a little bit better. And that is a difficulty because what that does is it trespasses on certain people's rights of private property, certain people's desires for their own legacy, that sort of thing. And that is really hard to talk about. Because when we're saying things like, let's be blunt, somebody's going to die soon, we can't really say that because that's inappropriate.
So Lee, the third bullet.
That's not really what I'm trying. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that, and definitely we can take out the likely to change hands soon. But I think we do need to focus on these two areas. We can't, we solved Mud Lake. Mud Lake is solved. Mary Wingate's hill is solved with conservation easements. So the things that I see as the number one overarching things that's going to change Nederland more than anything is going to be what happens to the downtown. Whether it happens in 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, that is going to affect the town more than anything else.
I would love to see that energy that you have put in the way that would do the most effective solutions, Lee. I really would.
So Lee, the last bullet, when we take out that are likely to change hands soon. What do you think of that? Nederland will have a vision and plan for the 2 downtown areas.
That's great.
I think it is. So the third bullet where it says build another bridge that extends Snyder Street, are you addressing safety there? Are you addressing? Yes. So maybe as a big picture vision, it could be Nederland is addressing safety to have adequate egress methods in an emergency. And then
even have to bring the word infrastructure
later, right?
Even Nederland needs a second bridge. I mean, I think that's okay to say that.
Yeah, including a second bridge, but maybe there's other things. So Nederland will address safety concerns, including another bridge in the case of an emergency.
Yeah.
That's an overarching objective. That where that bridge to Conger, then that kind of specific thing gets addressed later.
And the reference to the building on the building on the RTD site, that's the Historical Society. That's I'm not that is going to mean partnering with the Historical Society. If the town wants to move that project forward, they're going to have to get together with Historical Society, get some grant money, get that happening.
So I'm going to come from a big picture thing again here.
Right, exactly.
The town of Nederland will work with organizations to develop cultural opportunities to draw economic growth.
Yeah, that spans
to me, it's a bigger picture. That is one most definitely an important thing, but there's other things too that, how do we draw a cultural economic development goal, right? And that's working with organizations that are both nonprofit and private. There's many things.
Yeah. Is that part of the team you worked on, Jill?
We had it in ours, but I think it belongs in the economic vision.
To tie it together.
Here's the thing that I'm thinking when I put that in there, and the town of Nederland paid me money as a surveyor to lay that out.
Mm-hmm.
Nederland. Okay, so it wasn't the Historical Society, it wasn't RTD, it was the town of Nederland paid me money. And it was 20 years ago. And that thing is just moldering. It's just moldering and falling to the ground. I mean,
so Lee, is the schoolhouse behind the community center.
Yes.
So to be honest with you, I think an action item under your objectives should be address the dilapidating buildings.
There you
and
go.
How can we renovate, find funding.
Absolutely.
Right, and renovate these buildings to be a cultural economic draw to the town of Nederland, right? It's more than just the Bryant House.
Right. I'm sorry, Jill, but we had a fabulous pottery studio in the Magnolia Schoolhouse for 5 years. It was wonderful. And then it got kicked out when the renovations happened for no really good reason, frankly. But anyway, that's my particular bugaboo. But you're absolutely right, Jill. That building has been sitting empty ever since.
Yeah, and there are others.
And there are other situations that can
It's nobody's fault, but I think it's more a bigger picture. How do we seize these assets? And create them into cultural draws to our community as we develop identity, right? It's part of our identity development.
Yeah. I think
love
that it has to be the buildings and infrastructure both, because they make traffic flow, they make parking easy,
Yeah.
and the toilets flush.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'd like to go back to that last bullet about the vision and the plan for the 2 downtown areas. We do have a master plan for the Central Business District. It's a 2017 master plan created by the DDA. So we have that.
Good.
So maybe, pardon me?
Is that the same vision that Ron is still talking about, or is it changed significantly? Are we?
Ron has
Ron had nothing to do with it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, Ron's development is separate from that. So
okay, so we looked at it in 2017, and then do we periodically look at it, or what happens?
well, I think that would be a good goal or objective.
Okay.
Review.
Well, yeah, like a DDA should be an objective in general.
Review and update the Netherland Downtown Development Authority 2017 master plan.
Absolutely.
We're looking at 10 years. We want to say it, or say, twice over this period, or do we want to get that prescriptive?
Well, I think it's good to have be prescriptive on the objectives.
Okay.
So maybe a sub bullet under that, Netherland will have a vision and plan for the downtown areas. A sub bullet is revise the 2017 master plan.
Yeah. Okay. Good enough.
That's cool.
I have a question. This is May Gerald. I had suggested, maybe it was in the next block, but under this subcommittee, that you follow the public engagement process that's being outlined in the subcommittee. And I think it would be important, if we do plan to get public input, to write that in as an objective.
Under the economic.
Right, there it is.
I agree. I
Is that
entirely agree.
places where we
Yeah.
overlap? Thank you. How would you feel about that? I know you took it out before. Or maybe put it up, I don't know, maybe it was in the next part. I don't think you put it in, but I did suggest it. But is there a reason to not include it? Because I think people want to have a say. I think if we're going to be taken seriously as a committee, people need to have a feeling, and we can get that thing that people can scan. Once we have some definite things that we can get people to weigh in on, we can start maybe with, I don't know, roll it out slowly. But this is obviously something that the whole look of downtown is something that's really been discussed a lot. And I think people want to see something happen and have a voice in it. That's just my own take on it. But I think people don't take committees like this, great as the work that's being done is. I'm really quite impressed with Miranda and Karen for putting all this together and keeping up with it, and all the other members of the committee. But
Thanks,
to
May.
be taken seriously, I think I'll feel like it's a failure if we don't start voting on stuff like, are we going to do that with downtown? Are we going to annex? People are used to having a say up here. They still want to have a say.
But they can't always, because sometimes it's private property and the person gets to do what they want with it, as long as they meet the town design requirements. So that is a concern too.
Well, and that's a part of the whole update to the
comp plan.
The zoning map, yeah, because
the comp plan.
Really, you're talking about doubling density in some neighborhoods, and I don't think people are aware of the fact that that's what the ADU ordinance allows for. So, but that's all going to roll out, and I'm confident that if everybody keeps going on this, that hopefully we'll get some actual exchange and progress, because we've been talking about this same stuff, the second bridge, for as long as I've been going to meetings, which is way too long to talk about, 30 years. So
we
yeah,
have been.
it's kind of time. It's like when you draw the curtain back and you come up with a couple of different options.
So I'd like to suggest a sub-bullet under the vision and plan for the two downtown areas is to engage the public.
It's a good point. That's what May was saying, I think, that it captures it.
Yeah, and I really like what May suggested of actually having some drawings for the public to look at.
Yeah,
Totally
I think it's a great idea. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to note, looks like we have Marianne on as well, who's another member of the public. And so Marianne, we're just kind of having an informal conversation about the goals and objectives. And I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add as we continue on this conversation.
Marianne is actually Kayla.
Oh, how funny. Okay. Hello, Kayla.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. So
Yeah,
Jeanette, Kayla's on our, go ahead.
Okay. Just been listening a lot, and I think there's some really valid points. I do think there is information, and will you actually talk to the people that are involved in things like the house that's next to the RV parking lot, why that hasn't been completely restored? It's because the museum, the Historical Society, did not have the financials to do it. It was hard enough for us to save the building in the first place. It was done with all volunteer, and we've put a couple of different roofs on it. We've done, minimal work as far as just keeping it from totally becoming dilapidated, because it is of historic, very good, credible historic value. And it's sad to me that people in the community, having been president of the Historical Society off and on for the last almost 30 years, that we can't get people behind the steam shovel. We can't get anything to volunteer. And so people burn out, and they also have run up against county, they run up against town, then up against all sorts of things, make moving forward with certain projects difficult. So I think institutional knowledge on some of the things that you guys are talking about would be a good thing, a good help. That was the reason that was done, is that the former town administrator Stevens just decided he wanted to cut all water lines to the building for no reason whatsoever, other than just a certain amount of spite. But we're not going to go there. So it does have effect on what happens in our community when things get done without the proper information behind them. I'm trying to be very polite there. So yeah, I think May, I love you to death. You've got a great way of encapsulating a lot of what you and I have had multiple conversations outside of our regular meetings on. And I understand people's sensitivity. I understand our sensitivity, but the reality of it is there's actually three big pieces of property in this town that we should look at in the future. One of them is up by the old Wolf Tongue Mill, and that is also going to change hands in the foreseeable future here. That's a 17-acre plot there that could be, and it's developed. It is, I believe, Lee, that is zoned industrial, not even commercial. So the elements of development in that could be remarkable for the community. I've been talking to Glenna Carline. She has recently changed her mind as far as the Carline's Meadow down by the post office and would sell that, but and isn't going to be anybody that's going to put anything affordable on there because the price tag is going to be very, very high for that. But it's available. So that, and then obviously Ron's property. I'm very sensitive to what was talking about as far as, yes, changing codes and we're doing all these things and we're asking all the people in town what they want and that. And we really have forgotten that, or we're not sensitive enough to the idea also of the individual landowner in the community. And that's a really important thing. We look at all the lots that are available to infill, and we think that that's just, we have all this property that we could do something with it. And we really don't. Half of the lots that are in Big Sur are vertical. They're in a floodplain, they're vertical, or it's a lot between two homes and want anything developed there. So when we look at the property within the town of Nederland itself that truly could be utilized for building housing or businesses or whatever, it is pretty small. And we're going to bump up against that. I don't know how sensitive you guys are to an understanding what is happening with real estate in our community, but we thought it was exploding last year. That's nothing like what's happening now after people have mass exodus from larger municipalities to the mountains. It's going to see the ramifications of that mightily in our little community. So these are just some things I would love to have conversations with everybody about a lot. I'm excited about the process, but I think we have to be really mindful. That's all I can say.
So
I so appreciate everybody here.
It just
for
Thanks,
now.
Kayla.
Yeah, it just occurred to me here, this subcommittee is looking at the vision for economic development. So there's a lot of zoning issues and development issues that are not economic related. So I do believe that the zoning is part of the plan, of the comprehensive plan. So I just wanted to point that out, that economic development doesn't cover housing. It doesn't cover all the different factors that we need to consider when we look at zoning for the town.
That's true, Karen, but at some point, depending on where the ball bounces, there may be more combinations like we have at Perry's. But this is vision time. This is not prescriptive time.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that when we're looking at zoning, we're not only considering economic development, we're also considering housing. We're considering parks, recreation, cultural things. Mm-hmm.
And for that matter, it's municipal government. Do you think that we need to I mean, if we probably should pick one place that it belongs and stick with it, or it'll be duplicated everywhere. Do you think it belongs? I guess did the housing group address zoning at all?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go over the housing because we draw out a little bit of the goals, how do you do affordable housing incentives, what that looks like. So we did go over that.
Good.
I want to remind the committee, I think we had identified that yes, there are in fact duplicates amongst the different subcommittees. The purpose is to get community feedback to determine if maybe those duplicates are even what the community wants. And then our next step will be really to mold together like goals and objectives. So it doesn't have to feel so broken out. But this just kind of allows us, like Lee said, allows us to put it out there to the world and get back and engage in these conversations.
Lee, I say mission accomplished, huh?
Well, it was exactly what I was hoping for.
Yep.
These are hard things, and I agree with what Kayla says. A lot of, I'm a surveyor, so I believe in private property rights. But at the same time, the town has ability to work with private property owners to make things better. And the classic example is Mud Lake. The town and the county of Boulder stopped 7 houses from being big mansions being
And
built around
Wild
Mud
Bear.
Lake.
Yeah.
And Wild Bear. And they stopped. They made it a wonderful place. And so you have to have the vision. The town can work with private property owners to make it better. And that's a perfect example right there. And the town can work with a person like Mary Wingate to save the hill on the south side of the town. So as much as I agree that it's a private property thing, I think the town can be involved to try to make it exemplary. And I think that we have the means to do that. We can give, we can change tap fees, for instance, if they build more of low-income housing. There's many different things the town can do to make it more economical to get the vision that we want for private landowners.
And public citizens.
Right. So
I do, we have a little bit over an hour, but Jeanette, this is kind of for you here. So is there more you want to discuss?
No, I'm just really glad to hear that some progress is being made about dividing up, about defining what a vision statement is versus what practical comp plans and zoning requirements and the action that we take in our town government. It has to be proactive. Yeah, people like Lee and others who are cognizant of the concerns need to get in there and fight for all of us to make sure that this happens and make sure that Nederland stays an interesting, diverse, and exciting little place and doesn't become a mini Boulder. And, Lee, when you lead the way on this, you're going to find a lot of us just coming up and, carrying you along and say, yay, go for it. Because we don't want to see that happen either. As a longtime citizen of Ned, I want Ned to stay weird. And
we're going to be 10 years older by then.
But
yeah,
to
we are
that
going to be 10
point,
years older.
to that point, and to Karen's point, Karen Blakemore's point, the Economic Development Committee, I think, to me, what you're all saying is we need we need to really try to create our identity that strengthens our economic community. We talked about preservation. We talked about, the unique qualities of Nederland, that it's affordable.
Jobs for school, so kids stay in school up here.
Exactly. And remain in Nederland after they grow up.
Developing an identity.
So that's vision to me.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could, focus in on vision for the economy and economic development, like a couple of things that Jeanette and Jill mentioned.
Yeah.
Schools are important. A town. What was Jill saying? Something that people think of when they hear Nederland. This is what Nederland is.
Right, the
not just
identity
the
of
Frozen Dead
Nederland.
guy.
Exactly.
So, and how does
and actually, one of your bullets is about Town Square. I saw on there in Visitor Center Town Square, and I think that's really appropriate in economic development. It's about building community. So maybe the town, evaluates community spaces and where community can gather, in and that's just not only the locals, but the visiting community can
Right.
gather, for healthy reasons, for healthy, aligned with our identity.
There are so many things
I don't
we
know.
might be able to do that might not involve making a town square out of the visitor center.
Right.
Because that we'd lose a
right.
lot of good parking that way. But I'm
yeah.
just saying that if the vision is that we make sure that the pedestrian flow works for the most retail, so that the businesses get passenger traffic and that sort of, or pass through traffic, that kind of thing. I'm not sure that there aren't other ideas that we can come up with that are more nuts and bolts in the long run, like a river walk. There's been some conversation about a river
We
walk,
talked about that.
which would be
Yeah.
fabulous. But that doesn't belong in goals and objectives. It belongs in a long-term discussion of how can we reach our vision.
Yeah.
So that
Well, and I think that kind of thing belongs in that whole cultural, opportunities that visitors and locals have that create, a viable, healthy community.
Yeah,
So there-
something that makes people stop and stay.
Yeah.
Right.
There is
Right.
a river walk in the
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrence,
Go ahead.
okay, this is Miranda said something about how some of the goals and objectives in various parts of this document that we're coming up for we've overlapped one another. We've come up with sort of this philosophy or ideas. And one of my main goals or things about this is that I don't think you can, if you put this up on a board and put your finger on it anywhere, it's gonna affect. Let me how about my Rubik's Cube? We are all say we want a river walk and we want to have things, economic development, so tourists will come out. Traffic. Then you're not gonna have the people coming in that are, so everything. And if the people come here and so much and they want a house up here, there's no product for them if they want to move to be able to send their kids to school here. So, everything, all of our individual little groups are very in one another. We overlap, we bump into, we talk about, we want housing, but then again, there's those people, much traffic. We want festivals, but too much traffic, and we want a river walk, but that'll make people stop and go to the restaurants, which they should. And we can't keep our little town little if more people see us and want to move. It's so incredible. Do we let them in, or did we get in the boat and now we're going to pull the gang? So we have to be. So the secret it is out there. Longer it. They're want to move here, and because of housing, it's going to be different. So everything is connected with everything. And I look at that as we develop bigger document that we're all laboring so lovingly on to try and our fantastic little direction. And I hope that makes sense for everybody. Okay.
Well, Caleb, I want to jump in. This is May. What I was thinking about somewhat while you were talking was the idea of the town square, and that was being thrown around. And I mean, obviously in the summer, if the Barker Meadows is nice, people are going to go there. And then in the winter, I suppose they're going to be in the restaurants and, but if it's a gathering place in the summer, it'll be more of a gathering place in the businesses in the winter is just a thought. And that way you start to articulate some stuff that's going to happen on a timeline that starts pretty soon. And we're not waiting for a bunch of studies to tell us stuff that we kind of already know, like traffic at the visitor center, the pedestrian snarl up there. I was kind of hoping to see in economic development a little bit more of, or not economic development, I don't really know the municipal government, some more goals of improving the traffic flow there, right there, and some other places. So,
Yeah, we
I
kind
would
of
have
wrestled with that because it's between municipal government and infrastructure is the core for economic development and for that matter, for good residential. So we opted to talk about it here on this side of the fence.
Yeah, well, we actually did the 4-letter word CDOT on our education one, working with CDOT to try to get a better crosswalk where kids are crossing for school, and it affects everything. So
Totally.
hopefully y'all will flesh that out as a goal, if you think that's what it is.
It's important. Yeah, the whole infrastructure is important.
So you could have infrastructure as something about infrastructure as a goal.
Well, yeah, we talk about both the infrastructure and the built environment has to reflect what the town wants. And it's going to go through, as Lee was saying, through some pretty substantial changes in a modest amount of time, certainly within the time frame that we're talking about here.
So I would suggest for economic development, you consider infrastructure through the lens of economic development. What is it that you would like to see in infrastructure to improve economic development in the town? Ask yourself those kind of questions in order to come up with your goals and objectives. There is one, like the town square at the visitor center parking lot. That would be more of a solution. It would belong more in the action plan. And probably worded as evaluate locations for a town square, including the visitor center parking lot. Another thing I wanted to point out is that the river walk.
Well, I thought that was still too specific, Karen. So I had said evaluate community spaces, community gathering spaces.
I love that.
I mean, that could be, rather than just a town square, I just think it's more about community gathering spaces.
Yes, agreed. So, and that would be an action item to achieve your goal of community space, cultural opportunities that visitors and locals have. So to be, one specific way of creating a cultural opportunity is to have a gathering space. So, and another thing I wanted to point out is that the Riverwalk is in the DDA 2017 master plan for the Central Business District.
Great.
I wasn't. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I haven't looked at her. Is that Karen? Does the Riverwalk run the current trajectory or go further? And is it both sides or just one side?
This is on the one side. It's on the side closest to the businesses.
Okay.
And they talk about having a gathering space there. And in fact, if you read the article in the Mountaineer or listened to the latest podcast, Ryan from Boogie Records is looking at having some live music out there behind his space, which is adjacent to the community gardens along the. So the DDA master plan talks about having that space being a community gathering space, having a walkway along the creek.
Yeah, I just want to say I was the one that brought up Riverwalk, and I was trying to show specificity around, individual projects that could or could not happen. I personally don't want to see a river walk. I think we've got a lovely trail that goes along the river, and I think that serves a purpose. I love the idea of community space around the community gardens. But anyway, that's my opinion is not what we're talking about here. I just wanted to tell you that it wasn't, I'm not pushing for a river walk.
Okay.
Okay. Anything more on, this is kind of the intersection between the cultural subcommittee and economic development. I think there's a lot of synergies, and for that matter, the parks, and it weaves eventually into housing too, which is supported by infrastructure.
So again, identity.
Yeah, and it's got to have it. It's got to have the design to support the kind of growth that's very likely to happen.
So, Tom, one thing you might want to do here is think about categories.
Mhm.
You know, what are your major themes within economic development? What are your major categories? Infrastructure might be one.
Yeah.
Culture might be another one. Commercial, I don't know what they would be. But then you can organize your goals around those categories and themes.
Traffic and pedestrian flow.
Yes,
Yeah.
traffic. Mm-hmm.
Identity development.
Yeah. Boy. Okay, we're making some tracks.
And I'd like to see environmental sustainability in there. How we can get our identity development to become an economic strength around environmental sustainability.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to the culture part of the size element, because if you are really only planning for the next 10 years, you don't necessarily, I've been making the argument for a while that we keep getting ahead of ourselves. I don't think that people who live here necessarily are looking for the population to, double, quadruple. Who knows how big it could get? So in our housing subcommittee, we focused on meeting the needs of the local population. Because if you consider the big projects that are before the board for the last decade, if we could figure out what we want to do about that as a town, we pretty much have our housing needs. Sure, there's going to be development here and there. And as people have pointed out, you need to be consistent in how you're going to apply, zoning changes, and this can happen on other properties. So I kind of sense a direction here of this unlimited growth. Yeah, people are fleeing from the lowlands. It's true. And the cultural identity of the town, not necessarily as something that just keeps getting bigger, but as some of the things we talked about in the culture thing and the parks thing too, is if we were really to try to quantify and support this fabulous place that we live in, that's a job for 10 years without a lot of, planning for growth in the future. So I just kind of wanted to say, let's keep it in scale. We can always have a 10-year plan and a 20-year projected, or, because people generally say, we want to keep it small, and we have. Our population has really remained constant. So if these projects that are being discussed were to both pass, I mean, that would be enough for 10 years. So I understand that these are just part of the entire character of the town, and that's why the zoning and stuff, we're a little town. I think we should approach things more on an individual basis with zoning and stuff. And one of the people that testified at the ADU hearings is an architect that works a lot in Boulder. And she said their ADU requirements are very complex in Boulder, for example. And so I think the whole zoning thing really does need to be re-examined. And that is another gigantic project. Digitalizing records is another gigantic project. So I'm always the horse sense that comes into the dialogue and says, you know, let's try to keep it in scale and not be thinking about the valley view from the hill unless that's what people want. And that's why, I mean, if that's really what people want, I think we need to give them an opportunity to say so. Yeah, I see it stretching all the way to war. I remember when I was a kid, the drive from Denver to Boulder, there was hardly anything there.
Right.
And my dad said one day that's going to be almost wall-to-wall houses. And he was right. And that's what some people would like to see up here. It's happened
That's
other places.
That's kind of what Lee, I think, was trying to capture earlier, is that if change is going to inevitably come as property ownership changes. And we can either go reactive or think ahead a bit and try and steer what happens, because we still, for now, have a little bit of influence. If we don't consciously think about where this goes, then private money will come in and it'll make it happen on its own with no direction.
Well, I've been thinking, in fact, I started a note to Caleb Melamed. Maybe I should send it to Doudna, that we should get maybe the kids to start drawing their vision, or, you know, try to get some people more engaged about, you know, if that's an assignment. I don't know how it would work, but I mean, that's the kind of thing you do when you're really getting people excited about, you know, I'm going to have a say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just going to pop in and give you guys a half-hour warning, and just wanted to know if any of you had anything else in the Envision 2030 document that you wanted to talk about. There are some people who've been on who we haven't heard a lot from, and I just want to make sure if there's someone who's participating who showed up for a specific thing that they wanted to make sure we covered, that they had that opportunity as well. So is there anything besides the topics we've already been discussing that someone would like to see considered?
I had one question on process. Okay, so tonight we're doing this public charrette. We're going to do something on Saturday. How do things get incorporated? Do they go? What is the timeline for going back to the subcommittees and then reconvening and looking at this again?
So all the subcommittees received an invite for the first week of May for their respective date and times. Now, I did encourage, I know, Tommy, you missed our last meeting. I did encourage the committee to try and get together more often. And so Peter has started a feedback document that we will upload on Friday. That'll include all the notes from the sessions that happened this week. And then every Friday we'll update it with respective information. That also includes the comments that come through on Facebook or ones that we get emailed to us. So Peter, while you're here, I'm almost thinking we should probably upload this type of document and track changes instead. And we can talk more about that tomorrow. But I think your committee should reconnect as much as possible so you're not being flooded with the information in 4 weeks from now.
I agree.
Since I kind of said what I wanted to say, do you mind if I withdraw? Because I feel like this is kind of turning into an internal discussion.
Yeah. Jeanette, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It was valuable. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate your listening, and I realize I came in kind of emotional, but sometimes I get that way.
There's more to come.
All right. Thank you for all your hard work. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Jeanette.
So as I was actually just stating, so originally Peter and I were thinking we would just pull together a document where we like list the feedback, but I'm actually thinking what makes more sense is to use this document to track the changes. And if there aren't changes, then it's just comments. We'll continue to have these comment boxes to the side. This document will get uploaded into Google Docs. We'll actually upload it tomorrow. And Peter, I'll upload this version and we'll make notes off of it. Again, though, if you're going to reconnect to the full subcommittee, we do need to publicly notice that meeting. So I would ask that you be mindful of how your connections look. I have no problem noticing them. I just need to know 48 hours in advance when you're meeting and where, or what, if you need me to set up a WebEx for you.
Okay.
So I will say, you know, again, we're asking, as you see, if you're on Facebook, you'll see we're pushing out RSVPs like crazy. But as noted, we had 3 people RSVP, but only, you know, we had 3 show up, but 2 dropped off. And so I would ask, as subcommittee members, please encourage your community members to either jump on these meetings, to give feedback on our website, to give it on Facebook, to do the avatar gather town. I mean, there's so many ways to get involved. Like May said, I don't want this month to be over and we had 0.5% feedback. That's not the point, but really need help from the committee to get the word out and sharing the documents with whomever you think, you know, anyone and everyone, just get it out there to people.
Good.
I think, yeah, we should do what we can to try to incorporate what we've heard tonight and move forward. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and actually upload this tonight. So, you know, if anyone's so motivated, but I have all the feedback so far. I'll get this out. Again, it'll be this Word document and we'll just keep tracking changes on it.
I'm glad I learned about density bonuses. That was the biggest thing I learned today.
Wow, that's great.
You're welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, I'm heading too.
Me too, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Be well. Take care of you guys.
Good night.
Bye-bye.